Hello, my name is Marion Hoffman from Taos, New Mexico, and I have never been employed by the nuclear industry. I appreciated this demonstration, and I assume it's one of those alternatives that was never considered in this current supplemental environmental impact statement. Here is my written comment. Comment on the scheme to transport 7 tons of plutonium pits to Llano to convert the plutonium to MOX fuel for nuclear reactors. The purpose. The NNSA has decided it would be bad for a plutonium pit to fall into the hands of terrorists or other irresponsible parties. While these plutonium pits, now retired from the U.S. nuclear arsenal, are already in the hands of an irresponsible party, the U.S. defense establishment, which drove the manufacture of these pits to insane numbers and used nuclear weapons and our country's willingness to use them to terrorize the world. But since all these retired pits can easily be turned into atomic bombs with the addition of explosives, this program is being justified by the fear a pit could fall into the hands of terrorists. The transport. So why is it a good idea to put these pits on our highways and railways where they are susceptible to accident and hijacked by these imputed terrorists? Is safety and not craving for more make-work at Llano is indeed the consideration. Anything done to decommission these pits should be done where the pits currently reside. The destination. Los Alamos National Laboratory straddles many earthquake faults on the slopes of a dormant volcano. At least 3 earthquakes have occurred in the Jemez region in the last 2 years. And while Llano touts its expertise in dealing with plutonium to justify this proposed mission, this now private, for-profit business has a disgraceful record of carelessness. Witness the cesspool of pollution in which it resides and which it has bestowed on the surrounding communities. The privatization of Llano has only increased its corruption and lack of accountability. The money to be spent on this dangerous project should instead be used to clean up the toxic mess which is Llano's enduring legacy. The danger. Plutonium is arguably the most dangerous element on Earth. It can catch fire spontaneously. Its fires are explosive and are extremely dangerous to extinguish, since the presence of water can boost plutonium to criticality. If a plutonium fire breached containment, it could render large swaths of northern New Mexico uninhabitable. The proposal. MOX fuel for nuclear reactors is an idea whose time has passed. Very few commercial nuclear reactors are equipped to use MOX fuel, with one exception being a reactor at Fukushima, which still threatens a wider catastrophe to the world and Japan. Meanwhile, many nations are moving away from nuclear power, which is itself a terrible idea whose time has passed, potentially made even more dangerous and polluting by any addition of plutonium as fuel. Okay, I'm just about done. Burning plutonium in a nuclear reactor simply serves to create even more deadly spent reactor fuel in a world that still has no idea where to put it. The alternative, immobilize all of the plutonium in glass where it is presently located and keep it stored on site. Clean up Los Alamos National Laboratory and change its mission to something of actual benefit to the human race, like the need for energy sources that do not endanger life on Earth. Such a positive mission would indeed justify Llano's continuing existence.
Thank you. Okay. Marion is next, and Jean Green will follow.
With your respect. My name is Marion Toronto, a mother of 4, a grandmother of 7, a traditional pueblo potter and director of Honor Our Pueblo Existence, HOPE, a community-based organization located at the Pueblo of Hoffman, Santa Clara Pueblo. I am a Hoffman resident and tribal member. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and for the extension of time to submit comments. These comments are my personal comments, and for the record, more research and extensive comments by HOPE will be submitted. I've been involved in the NEPA process since 1998, and I question and have questions about the NEPA process that this EIS supplement is undergoing. More research is being looked into. According to the NNSA's Phase 7 dismantlement flow, released on September 13, 2012, does not include Llano, but includes Sandia. However, Llano was included in the NNSA's fact sheet on the Mox Fuel Fabrication Facility and U.S. Plutonium Disposition Program as benefits of Mox strategy, which is a process developed by France and supports additional NNSA and DOE missions. I regret that this EIS states that there is no impact as far as environmental justice. I have stated before and will continue to reiterate the fact that Los Alamos National Laboratory is located within the ancestral homelands of Pueblo peoples. We have witnessed 4 generations of disconnect to portions of our sacred places, and we are suffering because of this disconnect. The Creator gave us this place. It is a place that defines who we are. We have sacrificed enough years of environmental devastation in this area to the point of holding on to what is left of our cultural survival lifeways. The devastation that the people of Santa Clara Pueblo in particular has undergone and continues to bear the aftermath of 2 major fires, one in which we lost our watershed. We were told that because of the radioactive waste and other toxic chemicals at Llano, that saving the lab was more important. If the fire reached those elements, we would have all had to evacuate. Where do we go? DOE, Llano, and NSA knows this, and yet in all due respect, the mannerism that is being displayed by this surplus plutonium disposition draft EIS plan seems to disregard the environmental justice impacts to health, safety, and well-being of Aboriginal peoples. This area is also undergoing geological changes. An earthquake has cracked my house. We are witnesses to boulders coming down from our canyon, floods that could cause damage and evacuation to some of our people. This area is a dormant volcano close to the Continental Divide, Rio Grande Rift, and known documented fault zones. It is not a feasibly geologically safe place to bring nuclear weapons, dismantle, and resulting into plutonium oxide powder to be shipped to Savannah Riverside. Our headwaters are only 5 miles from the lab, 5 air miles. Although I am in support of the idea to dismantle nuclear weapons, it is not in the best interest for 13.1 tons of plutonium to come to our sacred place. As it is, Llano has other plutonium production missions that endanger public health and safety. It would be wiser and probably less expensive to relocate the Ares program at Llano to Pantex for the dismantlement work, instead of trucking the weapons back to Llano to the Palito Plateau for the next 24 years.
Got a minute left, please.
I feel that there are more feasible choices that can be made for the long term for economics, fairness, health, and safety to indigenous peoples and the general public here in northern New Mexico. Bringing thousands of plutonium pits to Llano will further endanger public health and safety, continue to impact our cultural lifeways to extinction, and divert resources away from genuine cleanup, which is long overdue and currently a mission of Llano, which, by the way, is behind schedule. As I review the National Nuclear Securities Administration's mission, I ask that NNSA, DOE, and LANL review and incorporate the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples into the environmental justice aspects of your work, which was signed and adopted by the United States on December 16, 2010. If anything, and in all due respect, this would offer a checklist to enhance decision-making in the NEPA process and overall nuclear enterprise, thus helps protect peoples and their Aboriginal places, and recognizes that respect for Indigenous knowledge, cultures, and traditional practices contributes to sustainability and proper management of the environment since time immemorial. Our lives, our devastation here in the sacred ancestral homelands of Ha'owinge, Fopoge, Walatoa, and Cochiti is revealing the truth of the nuclear industry since the Manhattan Project and the signing of the cooperative agreements. The nuclear industry's 70-year history has also become our history, our story. Concentrate on cleanup and abide by the present WIP regulations for waste. Dismantle the weapons, but not here. We cannot afford to continue living in fear and what-ifs. Our lives are not to play with or for others to gamble and take chances. If one has the need to gamble or take chances, go to the casinos. And for the record, I'd like to offer a copy of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
That will be part of the record. Thank you. Shawn Green is our speaker, and Marion Green will follow you.
Shawn Green from Taos. Over the past few years, and still, we have been told that the CMRRNF is necessary for plutonium pit production and maintenance. Now that the project has been postponed, we are being told, oops, we have 7.1 metric tons of plutonium from pits that have been declared excess to national defense needs. LANL, Bechtel, NSA, and the DOE lied to us. And they continue to lie to the public despite the fact that their operations are damaging our genes, our offspring, our health, our environment, our water, air, and soil, our very lives and futures. This newly sprung project is an attempt by the nuclear weapons and power privately owned industries and co-working agencies to perpetuate the industry for profit on the backs of taxpayers. Bechtel, LANL, NSA, DOE, TVA, and SAIC, a nuclear PR firm that writes these reports. Surplus weapons usable plutonium was originally planned for immobilization. The supplemental EIS contradicts the 1996 programmatic EIS and is illegal. At the same time that DOE announces they cannot meet the terms of the legal consent order to clean up the unlined radioactive waste dumps and barrels at LANL, they now propose a new scheme to recycle pits into fuel for nuclear power plants. This plan perpetuates the nuclear fuel cycle, adds more waste. DOE spent fuel is nuclear waste. Instead of immobilizing and disposing of these insanely dangerous metals and oxides. The SEIS states that no action alternative would not satisfy the purpose and need for agency action because no disposition pathway would be selected. Further, immobilization of the entire surplus plutonium inventory is not being revisited due to records of decision of 2002 and 2003. Pit disassembly and conversion at Pantex is not being revisited. Direct disposal is not being revisited because the amount of waste exceeds the capacity of WIP which was never meant to house this kind and amount of waste to begin with. Waste Isolation Pilot Project. The SEIS also states that these issues are outside the scope of this document. Plutonium recycling, plutonium production, a nuclear-free world, war and nuclear weapons, the presence of radioactive chemicals in the Rio Grande and Albuquerque drinking water, etc. So we are left with 4 options that each include pit disassembly and conversion at PF4 Atlanta. Every option given us includes transportation of weapons, usable plutonium, and more on our highways from Texas to Atlanta, from Atlanta to South Carolina, to Tennessee, to Alabama, Ohio to Washington, Washington to South Carolina, to WIP, crisscrossing the country. However, no latent cancer fatalities are expected due to incident-free transport, and there is a risk of 1 fatality due to an accident over the lifetime of the project. It is clear to see that the assumptions made in DOE's computer model calculations have no relation to reality. Every alternative offered lists this statement: no radiological exposure to the public would result. Risk to the public would be small. This is not science. These are blatant lies. When one looks at the premises of the data, it is easy to see how DOE reaches these conclusions. They are based on an annual frequency probability of wildfires as 1 in 20 years, despite the fact that we've had 3 enormous wildfires coming right up to Llano's boundaries over the last 16 years, and severe wildfires in New Mexico every year.
One minute.
Okay. No mention of squirrels starting fires at Llano, nor candles starting a near meltdown at TVA's Brown Ferry plant, where the MOX fuel would probably go. 1 chance in a million for an aircraft to crash into a building. I guess they didn't factor in the possibility of terrorism. An earthquake that could result in severe damage to Llano's PF4 facility is considered, quote, beyond extremely unlikely. Despite the 3 recent earthquakes registered near Coyote and Tezuque, and despite the new geological evidence that PF4 sits on a rift zone. The accident probability frequency rate used in the DOE's calculations are generally 1 in 10,000 years to 1 in 100,000 years. Latent cancer fatality estimations averaged over 100,000 years would tend to be low. These computations have no relation to reality. This is not science. It is propaganda from an obsolete industry that is bilking the taxpayers to make profits on products we don't need, can't use, and that are damaging and endangering our very existence.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, Janet Greenwald. Hi.
Hi.
And Teresa Chavez will be after you.
Hi, I'm Janet Greenwald, and I'm co-coordinator of Citizens for Alternatives to Radioactive Dumping. I live in Albuquerque now, but I raised my children in Dixon, downwind from Los Alamos, and that's where my grandchildren live now, with my oldest son and his wife, also my daughter and her husband. You know, it cannot be environmentally sound to put dangerous projects at the headwaters of a large river system. Evidence of that is the fact that now in Albuquerque, where 40% of our water comes from the river, there is plutonium in the finished water. We're drinking plutonium. It is below regulatory concern, but we all know that the regulations based on reference man and 1950s science, talking about the drinking water regulations for long-lived alpha-emitting radiation, do not protect the fetus, the young child, and women. Then there are air emissions. There are many communities downwind from Los Alamos, and a few of them are Espanola, Dixon, Ojos Arco, Penasco, Taos. All of these communities are EJ communities where people are resource light and mostly of color. So there will be no impact. There is no issue of environmental justice. That's what we read in the environmental impact statement. Well, how do we make that judgment? I would say that we should make that judgment by what has been going on concerning Los Alamos and those communities over these last many years. After the Cerro Grande fire, I traveled through northern New Mexico to see what had happened. And I talked to a farmer in Penasco who said that he had never seen anything like this before. Usually if a foal dies, the foal dies before it suckles. But after the Sierra Grande fire, foals died after they suckled. In Ozarko, goats were born malformed, and goats aborted their babies in an unusual manner. Over in Sapeo, north of Las Vegas, where there's a break in the mountains, chickens stopped laying for over a month. There are no health studies in these downwind communities. If you really wanted to look into environmental justice, you would do health studies in these downwind communities and see what the cancer rates are like.
Got a minute left.
I have lots of anecdotal information concerning that. I have a friend that died of cancer in Dixon in her mid-40s. She stayed at home and ate out of her garden. She was a vegetarian. Up in Ozarko, there's a man who has a list of all the cancers in his area, including his wife's malignant brain cancer. These people live in a remote place up in the mountains. Environmental justice is an issue whose time has come, and yet we are ignoring it. The Department of Energy is ignoring it in this environmental impact statement. I plead for environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Chavez is next. And I think it's Sa Wang will follow. Wang? Okay.
My name is Teresa Chavez, and I'm from the Espanola area. And I'd just like to say that this this avenue that we're allowed to have an opinion, and a lot of people from our community aren't here because they don't know about these things. And also just being up here and being a part of this process is really sickening. And you know, I'm sick to my stomach, and I just feel sick when I hear the people with lasers and charts and try and fit all these statistics into how this project can be okay for our community. There's billions of dollars being made based on bomb making and disposing of plutonium and different things. And at the sacrifice of our land, our air, our water, our life, that is really sacred here. And you really can't say that risk is okay. And I'm here to say that I am not okay with it, and it's really an assault on our people, on our land, on our existence. And our people need to know about these things in a better way and have a voice, because I don't think that exists right now. And as I said before, our water, our air, our land, our life is being sacrificed for the benefit of corporate greed. And it sickens me. And I am personally here to say that it needs to stop. And, you know, as far as, I don't have the benefit of having a job, and I'm not a scientist, and I don't really grasp all of this, but what I do understand of what you're proposing is that we're going to get waste from plutonium from Texas brought to Llano, and we have our own waste to clean up, and that's going to really put some of these other cleanup projects, I feel, not as priorities. So I think we need to prioritize cleanup of the waste that exists already and not accept any waste from outside of the state. We need to deal with what we have right now. I just think it's really disgusting and insulting that it's even being considered. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.